Okay, welcome to another webisode of Dan R. Arman's fun science fiction novel, Bifrost. I'm Dan R. Arman. I'm a science fiction author, and I'm trying to put together funding to actually publish and release and promote my latest science fiction novel, Bifrost, which I really think is an awesome novel. And I'm holding a copy here. This is a proof copy of the novel, not the actual one that will appear in bookstores. As you can see, it's got nothing on the back. But I bring this up because a lot of writers talk about putting out a book, and maybe they have an idea, maybe they have part of a manuscript or fragment or whatever. This book is almost ready to go. It's got some cover art. It's got some stuff in the middle here. It needs some editing. Obviously, it needs artwork on the back, and maybe a blurb and some reviews. But it's almost there, ready to go. What it needs, of course, is some funding so that I can go out and do book tours and promote it heavily. I want this book to be successful and reach an audience. And I think since I'm taking a more non-traditional route to getting there, I think it's going to need you, my supporters and readers, to get it out to the public. So today's webisode, I decided as an update, I would read from the book to show you how good it is, give you a little idea of what to expect in the novel. And if you like it, you can go to my crowdfunding pages, which the links should be here or maybe up there. I haven't edited this, obviously. Full disclosure, I'm not a voice actor, and I'm not a video editor. I'm just sort of an amateur, so I'm just kind of feeling my way through this. So if any of the graphics don't appear at all or appear in the wrong places, well, that's just because I'm not so good at it yet. I'm learning, and I'm working on it. So today I want to read you a portion of the novel. And I'll just start somewhere in the middle here, just to give you an idea of what the characters are, the tone of the story, and what you can expect. And if you enjoy it, go ahead and click. If you can, donate. If you can't, share the link with people you know who might like this kind of story and might want to read some more of it. So just a little background on the novel itself. It takes place in the future. The characters are a married couple, and they've been sent on a covert operation to find out what happened to a space vessel that went silent. They work for a company, and the company wants to know what happened to this vessel, which came across a wormhole and apparently is not communicating. There's no sign of life on it. They just want to know what happened to it. So they've been sent on this mission, hopefully to find out, without any competition, finding out what happened to it, because that could really be a problem. So in this scene that I'm going to read to you, the main characters are hopping on on a ship to take them up to a space station. They're on Earth, and they're going to a space station, which is a way station for them to link up with their eventual transportation to go out into space and intercept this missing spacecraft that they need to find. And the main characters are Oedipa Mott. She's a scientist, and her future, well, at this point, fiance, Joe Casta, yeah, okay, is a pilot, and so he's going to help her with her on her first space voyage. So here it goes. Again, remember, I'm not a voice actor, but I'll try my best. Oedipa took one last look about the platform, took in a lungful of sweet sea breeze, and climbed the stairs into the space plane. Inside, the cabin was all sterile whites and beiges like the atrium. Crew members scurried about as passengers found their seats. One of the co-pilots greeted Joe on their way past the cockpit, one of his old buddies from flight school, but Oedipa didn't recognize him. They found their seats towards the middle of the plane. Still nagging her from the back of her mind, Oedipa began cataloging the crowd of passengers milling about. Though a small craft by spaceplane standards, it was still large in 3 columns of 4-seat rows. She spotted Dr. Giles 5 rows behind them in the aisle seat, conspicuously ignoring them with his nose buried in what appeared to be an old leather-bound book of some sort. A man with sandy brown hair and a thin scar across his eyebrow sat down across the aisle from Oedipa. His fingers twitched nervously on the armrest as he leaned over to stow his carry-on under his seat. "Pardon me, miss, but this is my first trip off planet, and I tend to get a little air sickness when I fly," the man told Oedipa. "I just wanted to give you fair warning." "It's okay. My first time, too." A small army of what appeared to be fresh United States Space Corps soldiers marched down both aisles and filed into the rows in front of and behind Oedipa and Joe. Oedipa wondered if they had mistakenly booked a special military section of the plane. To Joe's left, 2 small girls, sisters most likely, squirmed in their straps as the steward helped them settle in. Joe tried to help the closest girl with her clasp, but was having a hard time getting around the child's restlessly shifting body. Let me get that for you, darling," Joe told the girl. "My name's Joe. What's yours?" "Gwen," the little girl said. Oedipa guessed she was about 10 years old. "And my sister's name is Stacy." "Both pretty names," Oedipa said. "Are your parents aboard?" "Our parents are at home, but our aunt and uncle work at the lunar colony," Gwen said. "We're supposed to go live with them for a while our folks get separated. I'm sad because I'll miss summer vacations with my friends. The moon is so boring." "I'm sorry to hear that, Gwen," Joe said. "But the moon has some cool stuff. Low gravity jungle gyms, lunar putt-putt. Plus you'll still be able to see home from the window of your aunt and uncle's place. Give it a chance." "I heard there's dust everywhere," the other girl, Stacy, said. "That it gets up in your clothes, into your hair, and even to your nostrils." The girl poked a pink finger under her sister's nose, causing Gwen to flinch, and there was a short scuffle while Joe and the stewardess separated them. Finally, the last strap made a satisfying click. "There," said Joe, "all settled in. That puffy red jacket you're wearing is what's the problem. You know the moon is cold, but I'm sure your aunt and uncle have the heat turned on to a comfortable level." "I told her that," Stacy said, "but Gwen hates being cold." "Thank you, sir," the steward told Joe. Oedipa smiled as Gwen pouted at her sister's remark, pulling her puffy red coat sleeves tightly against her chest in defiance. To her right, Oedipa heard an old couple bickering in French about meeting relatives at the lunar colony. The man wearing a scruffy suit and fedora stood and motioned emphatically with his hands while the lady tried to put a calming hand on his shoulder. Apparently the spat was brief because it ended with the gentleman kissing his wife on the forehead, and then the two took their seats at the behest of the steward. Oedipa looked wistfully back at Joe and wondered if they would be bickering about relatives in 30 or 40 years. At least they wouldn't be bickering over her relatives. She had none close enough that she kept in contact with. The aisles began to clear as boarding found their seats. Apart from the stewards, the only passengers that Oedipa could see was a tall man in a black trench coat moving steadily up the left aisle. He was ruggedly handsome, but apart from that and a spiky coif, there wasn't much remarkable about him, except that he stared back intently as he ambled 2 rows behind her in an aisle seat. He seemed to pay no attention to the steward's directions and only averted his gaze from her when at last past them, his coat brushing casually against Stacy's knee as she fumbled with a talking doll's hair. Oedipa peeked over the back of her seat and then flinched as her eyes met his again. "Joe, that man in the trench coat, did you see him?" "No, I'm afraid I didn't. Why, Eddie?" He's been staring at me since he boarded the plane. It's creeping me out." "Maybe he knows you," Joe said. "Did he look familiar?" "No." "Where's he now?" 2 rows behind, aisle seat. Joe peered behind him and then turned back to Oedipa. You mean the really attractive guy with the lame hairdo and with a brooding, angry look on his face? That sums him up. What do you want me to do about him? I don't know, Oedipa whispered. Do you think he's a government agent or a corporate spy? For starters, I don't think Mrs. Charles is on this plane, Joe said. Second, we can't assume Stalker Boy is anything more than a garden variety pervert who wants to check out my girlfriend, a very beautiful woman with soft black hair to die for and eyes with a smile to match. But third, Joe's voice softened, I think we should perhaps discuss sensitive matters like this in a less public location. Oedipa sighed. You're right. I'm letting my imagination get the best of me. First, time off plan is making me a little nervy. About this time, the stewards were going through the pre-flight routine. Joe tried to comfort her by explaining what the crew was doing in the cockpit and what you could expect to feel as the suborbiters shy away from the pad. Just a little kick, really, Joe said. These babies are so automated these days that they would almost drive themselves as well as your own car back on Ohio freeways, and just as safely. Soon a trained amoeba will be able to fly to the moon. Sweetie, are you saying that a trained and experienced pilot like you isn't needed anymore? Are you talking yourself out of a job? Oedipa said, then added, I'll be okay. The pills kicked in. The paranoia is probably just a small side effect. Oedipa rested her head on Joe's shoulder. A few minutes later, she felt the rumble of the plane's engines and the sudden kick, and the ground through the porthole sped away. She glanced over to the sandy-haired man in the aisle seat. He was hunched over, gagging into an airsick bag. Oedipa wondered if she should have offered him some of her meds. They weren't in flight more than a few hours when Asgard came into view. Oedipa remembered when it took over 2 or 3 days for Joe and his crew to make the trip to the station. Now planners had figured out how to arrange it so the launch windows of each spaceport were maximized so that most flights caught up with Asgard's orbit on the first pass. Joe seemed pleased that Oedipa was handling the transition to weightlessness well, at least better than the sandy-haired man, except for a pesky ebony curl that kept snagging the corner of her mouth each time she turned her head. She wished she'd thought of bringing a hair clip. Space adaptation syndrome was rare because medication and patches doled out to the passengers pre-flight, but there were a few still complained of mild or occasionally severe nausea, and the stewards floated about checking on caring for those cases. And this is where I will stop for now. Next time I post an update, I will probably share a little bit more of the book, so you can get another scene. This was a relatively uncomplicated and undramatic scene, other than the creeper who's staring at Oedipa. We'll learn more about him later on. Also, I should mention, this is not the only book that I have. This one will be published soon, but I do have one book that's already on bookshelves. It's available through Amazon, and it will be available at places like Barnes & Noble and your local bookstores, especially if you ask for it. It's called River Dreams. It's a science fiction novel as well. It's more of an adventure story. It's relatively short, an easy read, and I think it's a lot of fun. But hopefully, if I can edit this correctly, there will be a link to, if you would like to purchase or look at this book, click somewhere down in the comments section, or look at the link below. All right, well, thank you very much for your interest. Hopefully I'll see you again next week with some more updates, and hopefully I'll have more to report as far as how my funding's coming and how my book is progressing. All right, thank you very much.